Hey, Successfuls, Jolene here. So I have a question for you. Are you a high performer? I totally thought I was until Kelly and I started talking today about High Performance Habits by Brendon Burchard. Join us as we talk about the common habits that high performers have and the ones that I don't.
This is the Success Through Community podcast. You know, it's been a minute since we recorded because we had to catch up on our reading a little bit. Because, it's one thing that I didn't really think about when we decided to do this for the podcast. I was like, oh, it'll make me read more. But then I forgot that that doesn't mean I have more time to read. So now I'm just feeling stressed to read more, and I have to figure out a way to balance that because that's
absolutely. Yeah. I was so excited when we decided to do this kind of a podcast. I was like, yes. We're going to read books. We're going to have conversations. Life is going to be great. We're going to be like intellectuals and everything. And then I was like thinking about it after the first season or second season, sorry, and kind of went, wow, I need more time. I need to read more. And but you know what? And before we get started on what we're going to talk about today, I have to say I'm very excited that I actually started a novel. Reading a non-work related book.
I saw that. Yes.
And it has changed everything. So I think if we sneak those in, it's going to help make reading these books, which are so dry sometimes, a whole lot easier.
Yeah, it's dry. And I think what's hard for me, because I'm a really fast reader. And I think I talked about that last time when I was saying why audiobooks don't work for me. I'm a fast reader, but when it comes to books like this, that are so meaty and that are not for pleasure. Like if I'm reading for pleasure, I can just compute and keep going and go really fast. Right. But when it's this, it's like I'm actually stopping to think. And this book in particular, which maybe I should just say the book name because I haven't said it yet. And we're like, how far into this episode already? High Performance Habits by Brendon Burchard.
Yes.
He has at the end of, not even at the end of each chapter, at the end of sections, he has performance prompts where he wants you to answer the questions.
Ooh.
And I'm doing it in a notebook on the side because they're not all short and I don't want to cram it into the book, So, yeah. But the thing is that these are not easy questions he's asking. I mean, some of them are, but some of them you have to stop and think about it for a minute. And it's like he's actually coaching you through making some decisions for your business. So it's not like he's just saying, oh, what do you want to learn? I mean, that's one of the questions. Like, what do you want to, what's one thing you want to master, a skill you want to master? And you might have an answer to that really quick. But then the next question would be something like, and what are the 3 things you can do to help you master that? It's like, well, I don't know. I have to think about that for a minute. You know what I mean?
That's why I'm reading this book. Tell me.
So but it's not quick in that way. So, I mean, some of these books, like this one in particular, is over 300 pages, and it's not it's not a small book either. Like it's a larger size book and it's thick. And so because of that, and because I actually want to get something out of it, it's taken me a long time to read this. So I'm hoping that the next one, maybe I can find something a little, shorter or something so that
a little bit more fluff.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want it to be fluff because I want to get stuff out of these, and I want our listeners to get more than just fluff out of them. But in order to have the time to do it justice, to read it correctly and really soak it in, it's becoming challenging. We might need to bring some guest speakers in to talk about their books in these seasons, just to lighten our loads just a little bit. So
yeah, I love that idea because a lot of entrepreneurs out there are using books as lead magnets and as on their tour. Not gonna lie, on their what do you call it, a junket?
Yeah,
where they go out and they do speaking gigs and all of that, and books are great for it. And I have a few entrepreneurs I'd like to reach out to and do that too. So I think that's a great idea for season.
Sold. Let's do it. Okay, but to get into this book, let me just give a high level. So, well, first off, Brendon Burchard. Okay, I have to rewind for a minute. When he was promoting this book, he came and spoke at a big conference for a network marketing company that I was a part of at the time. So my first experience with him was him speaking live in like a huge venue in Nashville.
Okay.
And he was very engaging and like motivating and inspiring and all the things, right? What I find so interesting though, side note, as I'm reading this book, is that public speaking was not something he considered himself good at for a very long time.
Right.
And it was a skill that he decided to master, and success achieved because he has mastered it. I mean, he was a very powerful speaker. So that was kind of cool. And because of him speaking, I bought the book like as soon as I got home. And I can see how back then, like I started reading it and I could see places where I took notes in pencil and stuff. And then at some point I just stopped, and I could see where I just dropped off on this book. And I think it's really interesting to me because I think what it shows me is sometimes you're ready for something and sometimes you're just not ready yet. Like it has nothing to do with whether or not this book is full of knowledge and whatever. But when I was in the network marketing company, I didn't really know, like I didn't have goals. Like I was there because I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and that's what came my way, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so like trying to come up with some of the answers to his questions and things like that were really hard for me at the time because I didn't know where I wanted to go with it. And I think because of that, I was not ready for, pursuing high performance at all.
I absolutely love that you said that because I just wrote a blog post for our blog. It doesn't go published until next week, but yesterday, as you know, I was going back and forth with you on it. I wrote a blog post on how books tend to find us when we need them the most. And I wrote that based on a quote from Neil Patrick Harris, of all people. But yes, I believe 100%. So you had this book and you never finished it. And I think like you said, you were not ready. It was just not in your space in that moment. But now you're going through it. You have a notebook, you're doing the exercises, and you're here today to talk about it. So yeah, today's that book's time. So go, Brendon, like way to go to find your way into Kelly's heart.
Well, and I think it also shows, it shows us though, as like entrepreneurs, like sometimes our audience isn't just not ready for us yet. And I think that's, at least for me, that is encouraging because when you have an audience that is like opening your emails and paying attention and responding to your posts and whatever, and then they just don't convert and they don't follow through, we can feel like, oh, well, is it me? Is it what I'm selling? Am I not explaining it well? Am I, like all the things that we automatically assume it's us. And I'm not saying don't ever review that because sometimes it is us, right? But sometimes they're just not ready yet. And when they're ready, they'll be like chasing us down. So
and that's why you see on a regular basis, you see people constantly saying, and you see it in other people's social proof too. They talk about how I've been following you for years. I've been reading your blog for the past year, and I'm just now signing up for blah, blah, blah. Right. It's one of those things when they are ready, they will jump on it. So it goes both ways.
Absolutely. And it's all about your consistency, like making sure that you're still there when they are ready. And that's where like the concept of not that outcomes don't matter, but not posting or sharing content or creating offerings and things like that specifically for the outcomes, because the outcomes may be a long time in coming. And if you stop because you think that you're not reaching people, well, then you're definitely not reaching people because you're going to be gone by the time they're ready for you. Right. Absolutely. So you got to just kind of dig in and keep going. But so he has his habits, and habits have been obviously a thing for me for a little while now because there's a few books I've talked about that are about habits.
Only a couple.
There's a couple. And he has these specifically 6 habits that he considers high performance habits. And he's done a ton of research, even prior to becoming the huge coach that he is, where he now, helps high performers build and even refresh their habits, when they start to slide or feel like things just are not going the way they want or whatever. He's done so much research and basically honed in on what are the commonalities between all of these high performers that make them high performers, right? Because it's not like anybody is just born that way. I mean, I suppose there could be a person or two that's naturally leaning in these directions, but really you have to work at it, right? And so he wanted to hone in on really like what are the specific things that are in common. And he talked with like CEOs, Olympians, actors, like all different industries. So it's not all corporate or, whatever. So he has honed these down to what he calls the HP6, which I love because it automatically makes me think Harry Potter 6, even though it has nothing to do with Harry Potter. But I see HP, and that's what J.K. Rowling has done to me. So I'm going to tell you what they are, but then there's one in particular that I decided to hone in on for this episode because it really hit me in a way, and I feel like it might be one of those tough love things that like so many of us really need to hear. And so I'm going to bring it out. I mean, we need to hear all of the things, but this one in particular, I think. So the 6 like in general
called out now.
No. I mean, maybe a little, but no more than maybe me when I was reading it. So the 6 in general, like high level, are to seek clarity. And that specifically means on who you want to be, how you want to interact with others, what you want, and what will bring you the greatest meaning. So that's one habit. To generate energy so that you can maintain focus, effort, and well-being. To raise the necessity for exceptional performance. To increase productivity in your primary field of interest. That's the one we'll be coming back to.
Okay.
To develop influence with those around you, and to demonstrate courage by expressing your ideas, taking bold action, and standing up for yourself and others, even in the face of fear, uncertainty, threat, or changing conditions.
I have to say, I love that because you never hear that being courageous is a part of good habits and good habit building and being successful. That's great. I love that. We're going to have to dive into that one at another time. But
especially because I haven't gotten that far yet. Okay. Because it's a really long book. Okay. So maybe maybe it'll be a Patreon episode after I read it. And then, but he does have like a bit of a Venn diagram that goes with this, where he groups the first 3 as like personal habits and then the second 3 as social habits, which I find really interesting that he puts increased productivity on the social habits side, because to me, that sort of feels like it should be a personal habit. But I kind of get it, because I think especially in this day and age with social media and things like that, like we can get so caught up in staying on top of social things and things like that it does lower our productivity. So maybe that's why he put it there. I don't know. He didn't really address why it was there.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say, does he kind of talk about, when he's talking about increasing your social productivity, I get the feeling he means in person, not so much social media, right? So that he's like, be social, go out, network. And I'm making an assumption here because I have not read the book, but that's kind of the vibe I would have get from what you've been saying so far on increasing that social productivity is
out. He doesn't say increasing social productivity. He just puts increased productivity under the social bucket.
Okay.
And honestly, he doesn't really address social at all in this chapter. So I'm a little curious why he puts it there. So Brendon, if you're listening, because I'm sure you are, I'm curious.
I'm not the one being called out today.
I'm curious why you put it there. Another thing that I would suggest to people, and I will find the link and we'll put it in the show notes, but one thing that he does offer is he has like a free assessment that you can take, that you're kind of intended to read it at the beginning, or read it. Do it, take the assessment before you read the book, then read the book and like kind of put it into action. And then of course, you get into his email list when you do that. But then at a certain point, so many weeks later, he's going to send you the assessment again so that you can take it again and discover like where you've progressed and things like that. So, and he does address like some of the questions throughout the book. He'll say like, when we're trying to assess somebody's productivity, it depends on how they respond to these questions. You know what I mean? So it does come in handy that you have read it before.
Did you do the assessment?
I did do the assessment, and I am trying to very quickly pull up my results because I don't remember exactly what my results were. And
I love that. Like, I'm not going to ask what your results are now, but I love the idea of having a conversation when you retake it, when they send it back to you, and see where you finished off.
Yeah.
Like, has the book made that much of an impact on you? And well, as we're talking now, your productivity, right? So I'm very curious.
So I can't find the exact number right now. I will, if I can find it, I will put it somewhere. But what I do remember was that I ranked like high enough that I was happy with it, but also like there was definitely room for growth, right? I was not in the top percentile, not that I expected to be, because I know that I binge watch TV sometimes when I could be doing other things. And I know there are plenty of things that I am not high performing, but it was nice to see that I wasn't quite as low as I thought I might be when I took it. So I'll be curious to see, because I am going to be putting some of this stuff into practice. I've already started putting some of this stuff into practice in my business and in my life. So it'll be very interesting. But what I really wanted to focus in on is a specific practice within increased productivity. And it's to increase the outputs that matter. Okay. And there's a quote here, and this is 100%, well, it will be referenced in our social when we're promoting this episode. It may not be the quote because it's not him saying it. He's quoting someone else, but this quote was like a whoa kind of moment for me. It's Peter Drucker that he's quoting, and the quote is, "Nothing is less productive than to make more efficient what should not be done at all."
Oh my goodness, that is so true. And I feel so seen right now.
Right? And attacked at the same time, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I am being,
I read that and I was like, crap. But to me, like, it's so important for me as a tech coach, because like part of what I do in my business is help people simplify first. And this is why. But I think it's such a great reminder to me as a coach when someone comes to me and they have this whole list of things they want to automate and whatever, that like, this is why I need to help them simplify it first.
Yeah.
Because it's all well and good to teach them how to automate this task and that task and whatever. But even when you automate things, sometimes they still take some of your effort, just less, right? And if it's something that they should just be getting rid of, then I need to point that out at the beginning and say, like, hey, let's not automate that. Let's just get rid of it so that you can stop worrying about that altogether. And then we'll focus in on automating the things that matter more. And then you can focus in on doing the things that really matter, right? So one of the things that he talks about, like a phrase that he uses, he calls it the PQO, which is a very weird thing to read in all caps in this font, because it's just a weird looking acronym. But what he means by that is prolific quality output. Now, the way I kind of was translating this in my brain, although I know it's not this simple, like there's more to it than this, but in the entrepreneur world, I take this and translate it to income producing activity. Not that that's always the case, because your PQO could also just be like relationship building, and that itself might not be an income producing activity, right?
Absolutely.
But it's something that matters the most to you, that has actual value, versus the small, whatever things. And this is where I had sent you a screenshot. I took a picture of a little paragraph where Brendon unknowingly was calling Jolene out, but also so many of us, like me too, in my own ways. But he was basically saying, you know, that how people spend, this is a quote from him, people spend eons of time on worthless activities, say creating folders and organizing their email, even though these have nothing to do with real productivity. And then he says, yes, sorry, your elaborate email folders aren't helping you. A 2011 study of 85,000 actions by 345 email users found that people who create complex folders are less efficient in finding what they need than those who simply use search or threading.
Yeah, I knew this was going to come up.
I know. So for me, it's less an email thing. Although to be fair, in my corporate life, I am very much the email folder organizer person, and probably to my own detriment because I do struggle to find things sometimes. But for me, it's way more like on the Trello side, organizing and reorganizing and, you know, all that kind of stuff, where it's not that you never need to do any of that stuff, but it's about making sure that like you're not procrastinating with that stuff, I think is more where he's going with that. Right.
And that is 100% me. I mean, when there are things that I should be doing, I start planning instead, or start organizing and reorganizing and all that. And you know what? It's so funny that this is a topic right now too, because once again, I've been working on this very hard. It's like, if, for example, when you should be, you know, reaching out to clients or putting together a project, and, you know, your sock drawer is screaming at you, organize me. Yep. I don't match. And it's one of those things where that organizing skill is a great skill to have, but it's also the best procrastination skill on the planet. Yeah. And it doesn't move you forward. And it doesn't make finding things any easier. That really hit me right in the feels, because he's right.
Yeah. And me too, which is why I chose this section, because like you and I have our different ways that we decrease our productivity in this way. Yeah. But like we all have it on some level. And so, you know, there's so much to be gleaned from all of the sections of this book. But I feel like every single person listening probably just felt that, like, knew exactly what they do in this regard. You know what I mean? So I want
your sock drawer, your email folder.
Yeah, sock drawer, your email, your Trello, your something. You're doing something, right? So his focus, and what we're going to focus on just from this section is, and this is a direct quote from him too, says, figuring out what you're supposed to produce and learning the priorities in the creation, quality, and frequency of that output is one of the greatest breakthroughs you can have in your career. So as an example that he gave, which he gave a couple examples, but we're once again going to come back to Steve Jobs because, I mean, man was a genius, right? So he said his example here in this way, he says, for Steve Jobs, it was dumping a bunch of products from Apple's list so he could focus on massively scaling fewer products, which would change the world.
And that's how it should be done.
So true, right? Like he dumped all kinds of stuff, but focused so heavily on iPhones and that sort of thing. And they have changed the world, because look at how many other companies have like either come into existence or totally changed their focus because of what he did, right?
Mm-hmm. That comes down to that clarity too, right? Once you drop everything that isn't important, you're going to have more clarity because there's less clutter.
Right.
And you'll be able to set your sights a little bit higher, and everything will be a lot clearer on how to get there, for sure. Yeah. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And he talks about, like, for himself, especially, like, he had decided to, you know, quit his job, and he was going to focus on becoming a writer, speaker, and online trainer, right? That's what he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. But for one thing, that was, I think, one too many things for him to focus on, like, in that moment. Like, yes, he could work towards all those things, but, like, you kind of have to choose a primary, I think, is where he's going with this. Yeah. And work towards that goal, knowing that if your other goals are related, which they should be if you're considering them all in one kind of business effort, then they will kind of be natural outgrowths of you pursuing excellence in the primary thing, right?
Yeah.
Because he said,
It's just
he
a bit
spent,
organic, right?
right. Like he said, he spent almost a year, like basically wasting time. He was trying to write articles for magazines, begging people to let them speak, hoping he'd get paid, learning all these different online marketing things and online course platforms and stuff. And then he says, one day sitting in a cafe, I realized I'd spent all day, quote, working, but had nothing to show for it. He said,
Spreading himself too thin.
He said, I thought not one thing I've done today is going to advance my career or be remembered by me or anyone else 10 years from now.
That hits you right in the gut, doesn't it?
And so it makes you think about, and I'm not saying it, he's not saying don't do any of these things, but it makes you think about how much time I spend putting out content for social media or even emails or whatever they might be, right? He's not saying they're not important. What he's saying is they're fleeting. They're here and they're gone. What is going to last?
Yeah.
What is going to make the impact and still be around? Now, yeah, you've got to do those other things because if you don't do them, you have no visibility. So, like they matter, of course, but they shouldn't be getting that much of your time and that much of your effort. And for me, I feel like I stumbled upon my primary thing. I knew about it, but I stumbled upon like honing in on it more recently. And that was to switch to a membership style of, business model for my business, as opposed to trying to create individual courses and sell them individually.
Right.
Because I felt like I'm going to be spending so much time trying to educate people about what I'm selling right now. I'm not even going to have time to create more things to sell. You know what I mean? It's like,
yep.
You have to hone in on like, how can I get to a point where, and he doesn't say this particularly, but this is how it like my brain heard some of it. How can I get to a point where my message is so clear that other people can be telling other people about it for me? And that can't happen if I'm selling something new every month.
Every month. Absolutely.
It just can't, right?
Yeah.
And
what is that old saying? Jack of all trades, master of nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
What it comes down to. And, I even asked you today about the membership. We were talking a little bit about it. And that's the clarity that I came through is when you're sitting there, even though you're promoting one membership, what I've been doing, and I think I've been doing wrong, and this is actually kind of just driving my point to myself, is every month I'm focusing on what is inside the membership this month. And that's all I care about putting out there is, distractions for April. And all I talk about on all my social is about distractions. And I'm going, that's not selling the membership. That's selling that program. So I've gone from the membership to the program, but now I have to do it at a high level point and just the membership, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because
I think you can do a combination, right? Like the point of having a membership is to sell one thing, right? So you don't constantly feel like you're selling a new thing. But I do think it makes sense, maybe not the whole month, but like in the week or the week before a new program is being launched in the membership, that you use that as your content topic, right?
Yeah. And
then it just points
the other way around.
Right. Then it just points back to the membership. And then the rest of the month you can talk about just the membership and other, whatever. So
exactly. Yeah. And thank you for articulating that for me. I have to
you said
interrupt
the same
our
thing.
Program.
Oh, yes.
I'm going to interrupt here because my husband is actually right behind me and he just heard me and he sent me a quick message saying, it's funny because the actual saying is, Jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. Not really, but yeah, okay. I just had to point that out, but
I've never heard that full quote before.
Me either. I've always finished it at master of none, which makes perfect sense. And when you have that clarity and you're focusing on the one thing, oh, there's a flashback for you. When you have that clarity and you're not spreading yourself too thin, then you're going to find that you're going to be able to move forward and and be more of a high performer than you were before. So that's the goal, the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah. Well, and so like for him in particular, he decided like, because each person has to figure out, okay, well, these are my 3-year, however many goals of things I want to work towards, but what's my PQO, right? What's the thing?
Right.
And for him, he decided it was writing books. That's where he wanted to focus his energy. And so he did. And I mean, because of that, he's now spoken on Oprah and like plenty of places. You know what I mean? Like the speaking engagements
come talk about your book.
Yeah, the stuff that he was wanting came to him anyway. It's not like he didn't get any of that. And he's taught like hundreds of thousands, I think into the millions if you go into like his YouTube videos of people in online courses. So all 3 of the things that he talked about, he's doing, but only because he focused in on one thing and made it the most important thing. So each person has to figure out what that one thing for them is, right? And he talked about like figuring out what your kind of percentage breakdown is, because obviously there are still things that have to get done that are not going to feed directly that PQO every time, right? I mean, there are other things about managing a business and whatever. And he's not even talking about balancing life with in this moment. I mean, because that's a whole thing too. When you're looking at how you spend your business time, what is your breakdown, right? And then knowing that like your business time then is only this percentage of your overall life because you have to have lifetime, right? So for him, he said it was the golden kind of percentage for him was 60% towards his PQO, towards his writing, and 40% for everything else.
And I like that. I love that he pointed that out, because there is a balance. And balance isn't always 50-50 as most are led to believe, right? So for him, it was 60-40. For me, it might be 70-30. Like it really does depend on you and how you're going to move forward with it. But I think the main point, 100%, is focusing on the right thing.
Right.
The right.
And only you know what the right thing is, right? Like there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. It comes down to what fuels you, what is your goal, what is the impact you want to leave, right? Like those are the things only you can answer for yourself. And these, by the way, are some of the performance prompts. It's not like they're quick. It's like that's some like heavy thinking you have to do to get to a point where you can address that kind of question. But he does
really good self-reflection. If it's making you uncomfortable, then you're going in the right direction.
Then you're going in the right direction. That's right. So he does, at this point, he does start talking about procrastination. And he does say, he says, despite how familiar we are with blaming procrastination, it's not a real thing. Procrastination isn't a part of the human psyche. It's not even a personality trait. It's also not a result of poor time management skills that can easily be pointed at. Instead, researchers have found that procrastination is really a motivational problem. It's an issue that arises because you're not working on things that intrinsically matter to you.
Oh, that is so true.
So true. And I highlighted, and it just gave me the chills when I read it again, because that is exactly it. When we lack motivation to work on our business, it's because we're not giving enough time and attention to the thing that drives us in our business.
And you have to have that drive or you're not going to move forward.
Right. So basically the PQO is like, this is what excites you, right? This is what inspires you. This is your why, which is going to lead well into the next book that I'm reading, which I've decided to read Simon Sinek's, whatever it's called, whatever his why book is called. I already got the audio book because start with why. So, so that one is where I'm going to go next. And I just realized that, sorry, I just got distracted because I went to our Trello board for the podcast to see the name of the Simon Sinek book. And I saw that you took the picture that I sent you of that quote from the book and you threw it on the card.
Well, because that awesome picture you sent me, that is going on social. So everyone's going to see that. That is going to be a part of that, because when you sent it to me, I don't want to say I felt shame, but boy, did I feel shame.
Well, it didn't help that I
Right?
told you he was calling you out, but I
Yeah.
only say that because I felt the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
that's what I kind of love about this book is that he doesn't mince words. Like, he's not
No, and
trying
I
to
like
make
that.
you feel good and whatever. And like some of the stories he tells about conversations he has with high-powered clients and things like that, like he is definitely not there to stroke an ego. He is not
Mm,
there to tell them what they want to hear. He is challenging them and he is telling them things that they don't want to hear. But when they listen and they follow through, it gives them exactly what they wanted. So
it's
it's why I love kind of what I'm reading here.
yeah, I need to get this book.
I know it's a really good one. I'm sorry.
Here
But
we go again with that.
he also talks about how like a lot of us will say, you know, we have procrastination as, you know, something that holds us back as an excuse, and also perfectionism, right? Like I can't put it out yet because it's not ready.
Mm,
But and here's another we're all going to feel seen and attacked phrase. But he said perfectionism is just a delay logic fancied up to look respectable.
mm. I really like that. And there's so much truth to that because we all
Yep.
hear and talk about done is better than perfect.
Which I
And
wrote
that
in the
seems to
margin,
be,
by the way.
yeah, see, well, that's great. And it's huge. And it's almost, I want to say it's almost trendy.
Mm-hmm.
Even to the point where I joined a small little group of women where their summit is called Done is Better Than Perfect. Like it's something that we need to drive forward. However, with that being said, just slapping together your first draft is not going to get you a great book.
Right.
Right. So you still have to, hone in and make sure everything's done well and correctly, but it does
Yeah.
not have to be perfect. And I really like that he points that out. And
Yeah.
yeah, another
Yeah.
delaying tactic that we're also very
Yeah.
good at.
We're also good at, but it still comes back to his point of why are you procrastinating? Why are you letting perfectionism get in the way? It's because we're not honing in on and spending time on the activities that intrinsically matter to us.
Mm-hmm.
So the next part of the chapter, I'm not even going to go into because this would be like the longest episode we have if I went all the way into this. But the next section is like the actionable part of that, really, where he talks about your 5 moves, which are not the same 5 moves as Patrick Bet David. So it
Interesting.
sounds like it would be the same, but there's similarity to it.
Right.
And I will let me see if I can find really quick. Yeah, he doesn't even like he gives examples of the 5 moves, but really the quote that he has from here is just if there were only 5 major moves to make that goal happen, what would they be? And they're not small moves. Like these could be like large projects,
Right.
right? Like but these are the things that I have to do. And like for him, for example, he wanted to write a best-selling book, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the 5 moves that he came up with after speaking with other best-selling authors and things like that. And you'll see like some of these are super simple and obvious and some of them are not. But it's basically finish writing a good book, kind of important.
A
Um,
little bit.
if you want a major publishing deal, get an agent or else self-publish.
Yeah.
Start blogging and posting to social media and use them to get an email list of subscribers. And then he says, email is everything. Amen, Brendon. Create a book promotion webpage and offer some awesome bonuses to get people to buy the book. Bonuses are crucial. So even as an author, freebies, opt-ins, bonuses, important.
Yep.
And then the last one is get 5 to 10 people who have big email lists to promote your book. So these are not things that like he can just quickly check off the list, right? I mean, he ended up doing all of this in like 60 days because he's ridiculous. I don't know how he did that. But like they could be longer term things, larger projects, but you have to have that level of clarity of knowing what are the steps that are going to get you to that goal, which again, a performance prompt. That was not a quick one for me to do. Because first I had to come up with what was my QPO and then come up with 5 moves that are going to get me there. What? That's not fast. That took me forever to like think on it, but now I have it written down and I'm like, okay, I can work towards that. So,
and now you have clarity.
Right. Right. So, I mean, I say this unfortunately for like every book, but I think if what I've read is piquing your interest, you might have to get this book, or at minimum, go take the assessment, which I said I'll link in the show notes. And then you'll start getting his emails and he'll send you to like certain trainings and things like that. So that maybe you don't read the whole book, but you catch what he's talking about from his trainings and all of that.
I love that. It sounds like there's going to be a lot coming out of this book.
Yeah.
And and then just a quick clarification. Is it PQO or QPO?
PQO. Prolific.
PQO.
Something.
Prolific.
Hang on. I said it and
quality
then I forgot.
output.
Thank you. Prolific quality output. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. I'm taking notes. I mean, come on.
I know. This is why you got to get the book. If you guys want to connect with us on social media, Jolene, do you want to tell them how they can do that?
Sure. You can follow us on Instagram at Success Through Community, or join our free or paid communities over at Patreon, which is patreon.com/STC Productions.
The best way that you can support the podcast is to make sure that you are subscribed wherever you're listening and leave us a review. That's the only way that new people will find and join our community. The Success Through Community podcast is hosted by Kelly Gable and Jolene Mills, and all episodes are solely the opinions of the respective host. Our sound production and editing is done by Kelly Gable, and all visual creative, including our logo, was created by Jolene Mills. The Success Through Community podcast is an STC production.